I, 32, F, always believed that trust was the foundation of a marriage. It was the solid ground beneath your feet. Without it, you were just walking on a tightrope, waiting for the inevitable fall. For 10 years, I thought Mark and I had that solid ground. We had built a life together, shared dreams, and navigated the small crises that every couple faces. But over the last year, I had started to feel the ground shift. It was not a sudden earthquake. It was a slow, creeping erosion that I kept telling myself was just my imagination. He was working longer hours. His phone was always angled away from me. The easy laughter we once shared had been replaced by a tense silence that felt heavier than any argument. Still, I held on. I told myself that all long-term relationships had their lulls. I suggested date nights, weekend trips, anything to reconnect. He would always agree, but his eyes were distant, his mind clearly somewhere else. He would say he was stressed from work, and I would believe him because I wanted to. Believing the lie was easier than facing the terrifying truth that might be hiding behind it. My car was my sanctuary. It was a brand new model, the first truly expensive thing I had ever bought for myself. I had worked overtime for 2 years, saving every spare dollar. It was a sleek, dark blue sedan with a quiet engine and more technology than I knew what to do with. It had a large touchscreen, a premium sound system, and an app on my phone that could start the engine, lock the doors, and track its location. I loved that car. It was a symbol of my hard work and independence. Mark, on the other hand, was dismissive of it. He drove an older, more practical car and seemed to take a strange pleasure in mocking my vehicle's features. He called the remote app a gimmick. He said the large screen was a distraction. He acted as though my love for the car was a shallow, materialistic trait. Looking back, I think he resented it. He resented that I had bought it myself, that it was in my name, and that it represented a part of my life that was solely mine. He never said it outright, but I could feel his disapproval whenever I talked about it. It was another small crack in our foundation, another sign that something was deeply wrong. The moment the ground truly gave way started on a Tuesday night. It was late, almost 11 o'clock, and I was already in bed reading. Mark walked into the bedroom, already dressed to go out. He was fidgeting with his keys, a nervous habit he had when he was about to ask for something he knew I would not like. I put my book down and watched him. He avoided my eyes, focusing instead on a spot on the wall just over my head. The air in the room grew thick with unspoken words. I waited for him to speak, my stomach tightening with a familiar sense of dread. I knew this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. He cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. He finally looked at me, his expression a careful mixture of apology and urgency. I braced myself for whatever was coming next, already feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I just wanted to sleep, to escape the tension that had become a permanent resident in our home. "Hey, I have a problem," he said. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "My car won't start. The battery must be dead." I sat up a little straighter. "Again? You just had it looked at last month." "I know," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It's this cold weather, I guess. It's always been a bit touchy." I knew for a fact that the weather was not cold. It was a mild autumn evening. The first lie was already out, and it was a clumsy one. My internal alarm bells started ringing, soft at first, but growing louder with each word he spoke. I kept my face neutral, not wanting to give away my suspicion. I wanted to see how far he would take this. I wanted to see how elaborate the story would become. "So, what's the problem?" I asked, my voice calm. "I have to go into the office," he said, the words coming out in a rush. "There's a server issue. A real emergency. They need me there right away. I have to go, Sarah." He was looking at me with wide, pleading eyes. It was a performance and not a very good one. Mark worked in marketing. He did not deal with servers. His job did not involve late-night emergencies. In 10 years of marriage, he had never once been called into the office after dinner. The story was so full of holes it was practically transparent. "Can't they handle it without you?" I asked. No, it's my project," he insisted. "It's a huge deadline. We could lose the client if this isn't fixed tonight. I know it's late, but it's critical. He was talking too fast. He was adding too many details. It was the classic sign of someone who was lying. He was trying to overwhelm me with information, so I would not have time to question the logic of his story. My heart started to beat a little faster. This was not just a small, white lie. This was something much bigger. "So you need to borrow my car," I said. It was not a question. It was a statement. I already knew what he wanted. He nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. He thought he had convinced me. "Yeah, just for a couple of hours. I'll be back before you know it. I'll fill it up with gas to thank you." I stared at him for a long moment. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to say no, to call him out on his absurd story, to demand the truth. But I knew what would happen if I did. He would get angry. He would accuse me of not trusting him. He would turn it all around and make it my fault. He would create a huge fight, and in the end, I would be exhausted and he would still be lying. A different thought began to form in my mind. A cold, quiet thought. Maybe it was time to stop fighting the lies. Maybe it was time to follow them and see where they led. "Okay," I said, my voice barely a whisper. His whole body seemed to relax. He had gotten what he wanted. "Thank you," he said, smiling. "You're a lifesaver. I promise I'll be quick." He leaned down to kiss me, but I turned my head slightly so his lips landed on my cheek. The touch felt cold, foreign. He did not seem to notice. He was already thinking about his escape. He grabbed the keys from the nightstand, where I had left them earlier. The small jingle they made sounded like a death knell for my peace of mind. "Don't wait up for me," he said as he walked out of the room. I listened to his footsteps as he went down the stairs. I heard the front door open and then close. A moment later, I heard the soft, familiar hum of my car's engine starting. I watched from the bedroom window as the headlights cut through the darkness and pulled away from the curb. The car turned at the end of the street and disappeared. I was alone in the quiet house, the silence pressing in on me. The book lay forgotten on my lap. I could not read. I could not sleep. All I could do was sit there and feel the solid ground of my marriage crumble into dust beneath me. The tightrope was now my reality, and I was terrified of falling. But a new feeling was beginning to emerge alongside the fear. It was a cold, sharp feeling of determination. I was not going to fall. I was going to find out what was waiting for me on the other side. I sat in the dark for what felt like an eternity. The numbers on the alarm clock glowed red, marking the slow passage of time. Midnight came and went. Then 1 in the morning. Each minute that passed felt like a small, sharp betrayal. He had said he would be quick. He had said it was an emergency. But the hours stretched on, and the silence in the house only grew deeper. The initial shock began to wear off, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache in my chest. I replayed our conversation in my mind, dissecting every word, every gesture. His nervous fidgeting, the way he could not meet my eyes, the story that made no sense. How could I have been so blind for so long? The signs had all been there. The late nights he claimed were work dinners. The extra attention he paid to his appearance. The way he guarded his phone as if it contained state secrets. I had chosen to ignore them. I had chosen to believe in the man I had married, not the stranger he had become. The urge to know was a physical thing. It was a knot in my stomach, a tightness in my throat. I could not just sit here and wait for him to come home with another batch of lies. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Then I remembered the app. My car's app. The one he had called a gimmick. The one that could show me exactly where he was. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone on the nightstand. It felt like I was crossing a line. I was about to spy on my own husband. But he had crossed the line first. He had taken my trust and shattered it. He had taken my car to facilitate his deceit. I felt a surge of anger that momentarily eclipsed the pain. This was my car. He had no right to use it to betray me. I unlocked my phone, my thumb hovering over the blue icon for the car app. I took a deep breath and pressed it. The app opened, showing a menu of options. Lock doors. unlock doors, start engine, and at the top of the list, vehicle locator. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was it. The point of no return. I tapped on the locator icon. A map loaded onto the screen, a small blue dot pulsating in the center. It took me a moment to orient myself. I zoomed out, seeing the familiar grid of my city's streets. Then I zoomed back in, my breath catching in my throat. The blue dot was not at his office building downtown. It was not anywhere near the industrial park where his company's servers were supposedly located. It was parked in a quiet residential neighborhood on the other side of town. A neighborhood I had never been to. A neighborhood that had no connection to our lives whatsoever. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the app was wrong. But I knew it was not. The GPS was military grade. It was accurate to within a few feet. My car was exactly where the blue said it was. I zoomed in further, the map resolving into individual streets and houses. The dot was stationary. It was parked on the side of the road, directly in front of a small, tidy-looking house with a well-kept lawn. The address was clearly visible at the top of the screen. 123, Maple Street. The name meant nothing to me. The street meant nothing to me. But the person who lived inside that house meant everything. She was the reason my husband had lied to me. She was the reason he was not here with me. She was the reason our marriage was a lie. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had to get up and walk to the bathroom, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. I leaned over the sink, splashing cold water on my face. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide with shock and pain. The woman looking back at me was a fool. A naive, trusting fool who had believed in love and commitment. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone I did not recognize. Someone whose face was a mask of cold fury. I walked back to the bedroom and picked up my phone. The blue had not moved. It was still there, a glowing beacon of my husband's betrayal. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched it. I did not cry. The hurt was too deep for tears. It was a hollow, empty feeling that seemed to have carved out my insides. I watched that for hours. I watched it as 2 o'clock came and went. Then 3 o'clock. It remained steadfastly in place, a silent testament to the new reality of my life. The man I had married was a liar and a cheat, and he was using my car to do it. Sometime before dawn, I must have fallen into a fitful, dreamless sleep. I was woken by the sound of the front door closing. I glanced at the clock. It was just after 6 in the morning. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, slow and heavy, as if he were carrying a great weight. He was trying to be quiet, hoping not to wake me. He opened the bedroom door a crack and peeked inside. I closed my eyes and feigned sleep, my body rigid with tension. I heard him sigh softly, a sound of relief. He tiptoed into the room, shed his clothes, and slipped into bed beside me. He smelled faintly of a perfume that was not mine. It was a cheap, sweet scent that made my stomach churn. He settled onto his side of the bed, his back to me, and within minutes, I could hear the sound of his deep, even breathing. He was asleep. He was lying next to me, smelling of another woman, and he was sleeping peacefully. The audacity of it was breathtaking. I lay there for a long time, listening to him breathe. The anger I had felt earlier was now a raging inferno.
How dare he?
How dare he come into our home, into our bed, and pretend that everything was normal? How dare he treat me with such profound disrespect? I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to shake him awake and demand answers. I wanted to show him the picture on my phone of my car parked outside her house. But I knew it was not the right time. A confrontation now would be messy and emotional. He would deny it. He would lie. He would twist my words and make me feel like I was the one who was crazy. I had seen him do it before over smaller things. I could only imagine the lengths he would go to cover up something this big. No, I needed more than just a GPS location. I needed undeniable, irrefutable proof. I needed a plan. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could. I went downstairs and made a pot of coffee, my hands moving on autopilot. My mind was racing, considering my options. I could pack a bag and leave. I could call a lawyer. I could throw all of his belongings out onto the front lawn. All of these options were tempting. They offered a quick, emotional release. But they were not smart. We had a house together, joint bank accounts, a decade of intertwined life. A messy divorce would be expensive and draining. And a part of me, a small, stubborn part, did not want him to get away with this so easily. I did not want him to just walk away from the wreckage he had created and start a new, happy life with her. I wanted him to face the consequences of his actions. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the pain and humiliation that I was feeling. That was when I thought of my friend Chloe. Chloe was my rock. We had been best friends since college. She was smart, practical, and fiercely loyal. She was also a private investigator. It was a career change she had made in her late 20s, and she was surprisingly good at it. She had a knack for seeing through people's lies and a ruthless determination when it came to uncovering the truth. She was exactly the person I needed right now. I took my coffee into the living room and sent her a text message. "Are you awake? I need to talk to you." "It's an emergency." My thumb trembled as I hit send. Admitting it to Chloe would make it real. It would no longer be a dark secret festering inside my own mind. It would be a fact. A problem to be solved. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed with her reply. "I'm awake now." "What's wrong? Are you okay?" I typed back. "No, I'm not okay. It's Mark. I think he's cheating on me." The words looked so stark and ugly on the screen. The response came instantly. "I'm on my way." Chloe arrived 20 minutes later, looking concerned. She was still in her pajamas, a trench coat thrown over them. She gave me a long, tight hug at the door, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe again. I led her to the kitchen and poured her a cup of coffee. I started to talk, and once I started, I could not stop. The words poured out of me in a torrent. I told her about Mark's strange behavior, the flimsy excuse about his car, the late-night work emergency. I showed her the app on my phone, the screenshot I had taken of my car parked on Maple Street. I told her about him coming home at dawn, smelling of another woman's perfume. I told her everything. She listened patiently, her expression growing harder and more determined with each detail I revealed. She did not interrupt me once. She just let me talk until I had nothing left to say. When I was finished, I sat there, emotionally drained, staring into my empty coffee cup. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. Chloe took a sip of her coffee and then looked at me, her eyes full of a mixture of sympathy and resolve. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "First of all, I am so sorry, Sarah. You don't deserve this. He's a scumbag." Her bluntness was oddly comforting. There was no pity in her voice, only anger on my behalf. "Second," she continued, "you were right to call me. We're going to handle this, but we're going to do it my way. No emotional outbursts. No dramatic confrontations. We are going to be smart. We are going to be strategic. We are going to gather so much evidence that he won't be able to deny a single thing." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. "You said you want him to face the consequences. What does that mean to you? What do you want to happen?" I had to think about that for a moment. What did I want? "I want everyone to know who he really is," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "He has this perfect image. The devoted husband. The hardworking employee. His family thinks he's a saint. I want them to see the liar he is. I want to protect myself financially. I don't want him to take half of everything I've worked for and use it to build a life with her. And I want him to be humiliated. I want him to feel as small and powerless as he has made me feel." Chloe nodded slowly. A small, grim smile touched her lips. "Good," she said. "That's a clear objective. Humiliation is my specialty. Now let's get to work. First thing we need to do is find out who lives at 123 Maple Street. Give me the address." I gave her the address and she pulled out her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was in work mode now. It was impressive to watch. After a few minutes of typing, she looked up. "Got it," she said. The house is owned by a woman named Amber Collins. Age 30. Single. No criminal record. Works as a graphic designer for a small firm downtown. Amber. The name felt like a punch to the gut. She had a name. She was a real person. She was the woman my husband was choosing over me. Chloe seemed to sense my distress. Hey, she said gently. Don't focus on her. She's irrelevant. He's the one who made vows to you. He's the one who is breaking them. She's just a symptom of his weakness. What do we do now? I asked, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Now we dig, Chloe said. We need to connect him to her in a way that he can't explain away. The car's location is a good start, but he could try to argue he was visiting a friend or a client on that street. We need more. Phone records. Credit card statements. Social media connections. We need to build a complete picture of his secret life. She looked at me seriously. This is going to be hard, Sarah. You're going to find things that will hurt you. Are you sure you're ready for this? I thought about Mark sleeping peacefully upstairs. I thought about the smell of that cheap perfume. I thought about the years of lies I had probably been living with. The hurt was already there. Finding out the details wouldn't make it worse. It would just give me the ammunition I needed to fight back. I looked at Chloe, my best friend, my unexpected ally, and I felt a flicker of strength. I was not a victim in this story. I was about to become the architect of his downfall. I'm ready, I said. And for the first time, I truly believed it. Later that morning, after Mark had woken up and left for work, the real investigation began. He had acted completely normal, as if nothing had happened. He complained about how tired he was from his late night at the office. He gave me a quick, distracted kiss and told me he would see me that evening. The ease with which he lied was chilling. It was like he was two different people. The man I had married and the stranger who was living a double life. As soon as his car was out of the driveway, I called Chloe. She had already started her own preliminary research and had a list of tasks for me. Okay, first things first, she said over the phone. We need access to your joint accounts. Credit cards and bank statements. He's probably gotten careless. People in his situation almost always do. They think they're too smart to get caught. I logged into our online banking portal, a place I usually only visited to pay bills. I had always trusted Mark to handle the majority of our finances. He was the one who was better with numbers, or so he had always claimed. Now, I suspected that was just another way for him to maintain control and hide his tracks. I opened the statement for our joint credit card. I started scrolling through the recent transactions, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. At first, everything looked normal. Groceries, gas, the mortgage payment. Then I saw it. A charge from a florist. A very expensive florist. It was from 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday. It was not my birthday. It was not our anniversary. I had not received any flowers. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I knew, with absolute certainty, that those flowers had not been for me. I found something, I said, my voice tight. A charge for $300 at a flower shop. Good, Chloe said. Take a screenshot. Document everything. What else do you see? I kept scrolling. There were other things. Dinners for 2 at expensive, romantic restaurants that we had never been to together. A charge from a high-end lingerie store. A hotel booking for a weekend in a nearby city. A weekend he had told me he was at a work conference. Each transaction was a small, sharp stab of pain. He was not just cheating. He was funding his affair with our money. With my money. I had worked overtime to help build our savings, and he was spending it on her. The injustice of it made me feel sick. He was wining and dining her, buying her gifts, taking her on romantic getaways, all while I was at home, believing his lies about long hours and work stress. He's been living a completely separate life, I whispered into the phone. The scale of his deception was staggering. This was not a recent mistake. This had been going on for a long time. It was a carefully constructed second life. I know this is hard, Chloe said softly. But this is good. This is the proof we need. This is leverage. Keep going. Check the phone records next. Our mobile phone plan was a family plan all under my name. I had set it up years ago. I logged into the provider's website, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type the password. I pulled up the detailed billing statement. I found Mark's number and opened the log of his calls and texts. My eyes scanned the list. There were dozens of calls to my number, to his mother, to his work colleagues. But one number appeared over and over again. It was a number I did not recognize. There were calls to it late at night after he had told me he was going to sleep. There were calls that lasted for over an hour. There were hundreds of text messages exchanged every single day. I had a sinking feeling I knew who this number belonged to. I read the number out loud to Chloe. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear the sound of her typing in the background. "That's her," she said, her voice grim. "That's Amber Collins's number. He's not even trying to hide it." I felt a fresh wave of anger. He was not just careless. He was arrogant. He thought I was too stupid or too trusting to ever check. He had underestimated me. That was going to be his biggest mistake. I spent the rest of the day gathering evidence. I took screenshots of the credit card statements. I downloaded the phone records. I found the hotel confirmation in his email, which he had foolishly left logged in on our home computer. The reservation was for 2 adults. I even found a folder of photos he had hidden deep within the computer's hard drive. It was password protected, but the password was laughably simple. The name of his childhood dog. Inside the folder were dozens of pictures of him and Amber. They were smiling, laughing, kissing. They were at the beach. They were hiking in the mountains. They were in the hotel room he had booked with our money. Seeing them together, so happy and carefree, was like a physical blow. He looked happier in those pictures than I had seen him look in years. I closed the laptop, feeling numb. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no doubt left. My marriage was a sham. The man I loved did not exist. He was a character Mark played at home, while his real life was with her. I called Chloe and told her what I had found. "You have everything you need," she said. "You have him dead to rights. Now you have to decide what to do with it. You can confront him now, or you can wait for the perfect moment to use it." I thought about confronting him. I imagined the shouting match, the tearful denials that would eventually turn into angry accusations. He would try to make it my fault. He would say I drove him to it. He would say I was snooping, that I had violated his privacy. The thought of that conversation exhausted me. It would give him a chance to control the narrative, to play the victim. I did not want to give him that satisfaction. "I want to wait," I said. "I want to choose the time and the place. I want to be the one in control, not him." "Good girl," Chloe said. "So, what's the plan?" And that's when the idea began to form in my mind. It was a wild, audacious idea. It was born out of the pain and the anger and the humiliation. He had used my car, my prized possession, as a tool in his betrayal. He had mocked its technology, the very technology that had exposed him. It was only fitting that the car should be the instrument of his downfall. "He loves my car," I said to Chloe, a slow smile spreading across my face for the first time that day. "He loves the way it makes him look. He thinks it makes him seem important. And he thinks the app is a stupid gimmick." Chloe was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Then she let out a low whistle. "Oh, I see where this is going," she said, a note of admiration in her voice. "You are going to let him hang himself with his own rope. I love it. It's poetic." "He'll ask to borrow it again," I said. "His car is still in the shop. I'm sure he'll need to see her soon. And when he does, I'll be ready." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to let him drive to her house," I said, the plan solidifying in my mind. "I'm going to let him get comfortable. And then I'm going to turn the car off, remotely, and I'm going to leave him stranded there with her for everyone to see." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Chloe started to laugh. It was a deep, genuine laugh of pure delight. "Sarah," she said, once she had caught her breath, "that is the most beautifully vicious plan I have ever heard. I am so proud of you." Hanging up the phone, I felt a strange sense of calm. The pain was still there, a constant, dull ache beneath the surface. But now, it was accompanied by a feeling of power. He had taken my sense of security, my trust, my peace of mind. But I was about to take something from him: his pride, his carefully constructed image, and his control. All I had to do now was wait for him to walk into my trap. The next few days were a masterclass in self-control. I lived in the same house as him, slept in the same bed, and acted as if everything was perfectly normal. On the outside, I was the loving, supportive wife. I asked about his day. I made his favorite meals. I smiled and nodded as he told me about the stress he was under at work. But on the inside, I was a different person. I was a strategist, a hunter, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every polite word I spoke felt like a lie, but it was a necessary one. I was lulling him into a false sense of security. He had no idea that I knew his secret. He had no idea that the ground beneath his feet was about to open up and swallow him whole. The hardest part was managing my own emotions. There were moments when I would look at him across the dinner table and feel such a surge of rage that I thought I would explode. I wanted to throw my plate at his head. I wanted to scream at him, to show him the pictures of him and Amber, to watch his smug expression crumble into panic. But I would take a deep breath, clench my fists under the table, and force myself to remain calm. Chloe's words echoed in my mind. No emotional outbursts. Be smart. Be strategic. I held onto those words like a lifeline. My anger was a powerful fuel, but I had to keep it contained. I had to channel it into my plan. One evening, his mother, Carol, called. She was a woman who believed her son could do no wrong. In her eyes, Mark was a perfect, infallible being, and I was the lucky woman who had been chosen to serve him. I had always found her suffocating, but now her blind devotion to him filled me with a cold fury. "Sarah, dear," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I was just talking to Mark. He sounds so tired. You really must take better care of him. He works so hard for you." I gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles turning white. "He is working a lot of late nights," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Of course he is," she said. "He's a man with responsibilities. It's a wife's duty to create a peaceful and supportive home for him to return to. Are you making sure he has a hot meal when he gets home? Are you keeping the house tidy? These things are important, you know. A man needs a sanctuary." I felt my blood boil. A sanctuary? Was that what she thought our home was for him? A place to rest and refuel before he went back to his real life with his mistress? The hypocrisy was staggering. I wanted to tell her exactly what her precious son was doing on his late nights. I wanted to tell her that he was defiling the sanctuary she spoke of. But I bit my tongue. She was not my target. Not yet. She was just a pawn in his game. A very annoying, enabling pawn. "I'm doing my best, Carol," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Well, see that you do better," she sniffed. "My son deserves the best." She hung up without saying goodbye. I threw the phone onto the sofa, my hands shaking with rage. Her words had solidified my resolve. It was not just Mark I was angry with. It was the whole system of lies and enabling that surrounded him. His mother, with her outdated, sexist views. His friends, who probably knew and said nothing. They were all complicit in his betrayal. And when I brought him down, I was going to bring them all down with him. I was going to shatter the perfect image they had all worked so hard to maintain. That night, I decided to test the waters. Mark came home late again, full of apologies and excuses about a project that was going off the rails. I listened patiently, nodding in all the right places. After he had finished his story, I looked at him with a carefully constructed expression of concern. "You seem so unhappy lately, Mark," I said softly. "Is everything okay with us? You can talk to me, you know." It was a calculated move. I wanted to see how he would react. I wanted to give him one last chance to tell me the truth. Not because I would forgive him, but because I wanted to know if there was any shred of decency left in him. He looked at me, his eyes wide with feigned surprise. "What are you talking about?" he said, his voice defensive. "Of course everything is okay with us. I'm just stressed with work. I've told you that." I know, I said, keeping my voice gentle.
But it feels like more than that.
It feels like you're pulling away from me, like there's a wall between us. He let out an exasperated sigh. The gaslighting was about to begin. I braced myself. Sarah, please don't start this, he said, his tone shifting from defensive to annoyed.
I'm exhausted.
I've had a terrible day. The last thing I need is to come home and be interrogated. Why can't you just be supportive? Why do you always have to be so needy? Needy. The word was a slap in the face. I had spent the last year trying to give him space, trying to be understanding, trying to be the perfect, low-maintenance wife, all while he was off with another woman. And now he was calling me needy for expressing a sliver of my emotional reality. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I'm not being needy, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I'm being your wife.
I'm concerned about you.
About us.
Well, don't be, he snapped.
Everything is fine. You're just being paranoid. You're imagining things because you have too much time on your hands. Maybe you should get a hobby. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, stunned and furious. That was it. That was his response. To blame me. To call me paranoid.
To insult me.
Any lingering doubt I might have had about my plan vanished in that moment. He felt no guilt. He felt no remorse. He felt only annoyance that I was inconveniencing him with my feelings. He deserved everything that was coming to him, and I was going to make sure he got it. The hunter was patient. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was wait for the prey to make his final, fatal mistake. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day felt like a year. I went through the motions of my life, a ghost in my own home. I went to work, I cooked dinner, I watched television, all while a storm of anger and anticipation raged inside me. I felt like a coiled spring, wound so tight that I was afraid I would snap. I spoke to Chloe every day. She was my anchor, the one person who knew the truth and could help me stay focused. He'll get cocky, she told me during one of our calls. He got away with it last time. He thinks you believed his story. He'll push his luck. Just be patient. His arrogance will be his undoing. She was right. 2 days later it happened. It was a Friday evening. We were eating dinner in near silence. The tension between us was a palpable thing, a third person sitting at the table. He was fidgety, constantly checking his phone, which he kept face down on the table beside his plate. I knew he was texting her. I could feel it. He was probably making plans. Plans that would involve my car. After dinner, he went upstairs to take a shower. I took the opportunity to check the app on my phone. I opened the vehicle status page. I looked at the fuel level. It was almost full. Just as he had promised, he had filled it up with gas after his last work emergency. How thoughtful of him. He was using our money to pay for the gas he would use to drive my car to his mistress's house. The layers of his deceit were almost comical. I then checked the battery level. It was strong. The tire pressure was good. All systems were nominal. The car was ready. The trap was ready. He came downstairs a few minutes later, dressed in a nice shirt and jeans. He smelled of expensive cologne. He was not dressed for a work emergency. He was dressed for a date. He walked into the living room where I was pretending to read a book. He stood there for a moment, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Here we go, I thought. Showtime. So, you're not going to believe this, he started, his voice a little too casual. I looked up from my book, my expression a carefully crafted mask of mild curiosity. What is it? Work called again, he said, shaking his head as if he were the most put-upon man in the world. Another crisis.
A different server this time.
It's a mess. I have to go in. I am so sorry, Sarah. I know, it's Friday night. The lie was even lazier this time. He did not even bother to flesh it out with details. He just threw it out there, expecting me to swallow it whole. I felt a flicker of contempt for him. Did he really think I was that stupid? And your car? I asked, my voice flat. Still won't start, he said with a sigh. I called the mechanic. He can't look at it until Monday. It's just my luck. He looked at me, his eyes full of that fake, pleading expression. I hate to ask you this again, he said. But could I possibly borrow your car? I promise I'll be as quick as I can. I'll make it up to you this weekend, I swear. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The culmination of all my pain and anger and planning. I felt a strange sense of calm descend over me. The spring was about to uncoil. I looked at him, and for a split second, I saw him for what he was. A weak, pathetic man, so caught up in his own selfish desires that he was willing to destroy everything we had built. I felt a brief flash of pity for him, but it was quickly extinguished by the fire of my rage. I closed my book and set it on the table beside me. I stood up and walked over to the small bowl by the door where I kept my keys. I picked them up, the metal cool against my skin. I turned to face him and held them out. "Of course, honey," I said, and I smiled. It was a genuine smile. It was the smile of a woman who knew she was about to get her revenge. "Be safe." He took the keys from my hand, his face flooding with relief. He did not notice the coldness in my eyes. He did not see the predatory gleam behind my smile. He was too blinded by his own arrogance, too focused on his impending tryst with his mistress. "Thank you," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "You're the best. I'll be back in a couple of hours." "I know," I said softly as he walked out the door. "Take your time. There's no rush." I heard the front door close. I heard the engine of my car start. I watched from the window as the taillights disappeared down the street. I walked back to the sofa, but I did not sit down. I was too energized, too full of nervous anticipation. I picked up my phone and opened the car app. I tapped on the vehicle locator. The map loaded, and I watched the little blue begin its journey across the city. It moved steadily, confidently, heading directly for Maple Street. He was not even trying to be clever. He was driving straight to her. I paced the living room, my phone clutched in my hand, my eyes glued to the screen. I was a general in a war room, tracking the movement of my enemy. The blue moved out of our neighborhood onto the highway and then exited into the part of town where she lived. It wound its way through the quiet suburban streets, getting closer and closer to its destination. My heart was hammering against my ribs. My palms were sweating.
This was really happening.
After all the lies, all the pain, all the planning, it was finally time. The blue turned onto Maple Street. It slowed down. And then it stopped. It was parked in the exact same spot as before, directly in front of her house. He was there. He was with her. I imagined him getting out of the car, a smile on his face. I imagined him walking up her front path, ringing her doorbell. I imagined her opening the door, her arms wrapping around his neck. I imagined them kissing, oblivious to the fact that they were being watched. I decided to give him a few minutes. I wanted him to feel safe. I wanted him to be completely relaxed, to believe that he had once again gotten away with his deception. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, my hand shaking slightly. I took a few slow, deep breaths, calming my nerves. I was in control. I had all the power. I looked at the clock on the wall. 5 minutes had passed. It was enough. It was time. I walked back into the living room and sat down on the sofa. I opened the app on my phone again. The blue was still there, a silent witness. I navigated to the remote command screen. I saw the list of options: lock doors, unlock doors, sound horn, flashlights. And there, at the bottom of the list, was the one I wanted. Engine off. It was a feature designed for emergencies, to be used in case of theft. I was about to use it to reclaim something that had been stolen from me. My dignity. My thumb hovered over the button. This was the final step. The one that would set everything in motion. I thought about the last 10 years of my life. The good times and the bad. The love I thought we had shared. The future I had believed we would have together. It was all a lie. And this was the moment I was finally going to set the truth free. I took one last deep breath and pressed the button. A confirmation message popped up on the screen. "Are you sure you want to disable the engine? The vehicle will not be able to be restarted." I pressed confirm. A small message appeared on the screen. Engine disabled successfully. I sat back on the sofa, my phone in my lap, and I waited. I did not have to wait long. Less than a minute later, my phone began to ring. I looked at the caller ID. It was Mark. I let it ring a few times, savoring the moment. Then, I answered, my voice a mask of calm, sweet innocence. "Hello, Sarah. Something's wrong with your car," he yelled into the phone. His voice was tight with panic. There was a frantic energy in his words that I had never heard before. "Oh no," I said, my voice dripping with fake concern. "What's wrong with it?" I took a sip of my water. I was enjoying this. I was enjoying this more than I thought I would. "I don't know," he shouted. "I came out to move it, and it just won't start. The engine won't turn over. All the lights on the dashboard are flashing. It's completely dead." I could hear another voice in the background. A woman's voice. "Amber, what is it? What's wrong?" she was asking, her tone laced with anxiety. "I don't know what to tell you, Mark," I said, keeping my voice level. "It was working perfectly fine when you left. Are you sure you know what you're doing?" I let a little condescension creep into my tone, using the same dismissive attitude he had always used with me about the car. "Of course I know what I'm doing," he sputtered, his frustration mounting. "I'm not an idiot. I'm telling you, something is wrong with the car. What did you do to it?" The accusation hung in the air. He was already suspecting me. His guilty conscience was working overtime. This was going even better than I had planned. "What did I do to it?" I asked, my voice full of mock surprise. "Mark, I'm at home. You're the one with the car. How could I have done anything to it?" "I don't know," he yelled again. I could picture him standing on the sidewalk, his face red with anger and confusion, the woman standing beside him, looking worried. "This stupid car, and its stupid technology. There has to be a button you pressed or something. You're the only one who knows how all this crap works." "Well, there is one button," I said, my voice dropping a little, the sweetness replaced by a hint of steel. "But I can't imagine why I would have pressed it." There was a pause on his end of the line. He was processing my words, a dawning horror creeping into his voice when he finally spoke. What button?" "The engine kill switch," I said calmly and clearly. "The one on the app. The one you told me was a gimmick." I turned the car off, Mark. The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was a silence filled with his shock, his disbelief, and the sudden, terrifying realization that he had been caught. I could hear his ragged breathing on the other end of the line. He knew. It was all over. "What?" he finally whispered, his voice hoarse. "Why would you do that?" "Why do you think, Mark?" I asked, my voice cold as ice. "Where are you right now?"
I'm
at the office," he stammered, the lie weak and pathetic. He was in so deep he did not even know how to stop. "No, you're not," I said. "You're at 123 Maple Street. You're at Amber Collins's house. You drove my car to your mistress's house, Mark. And now you're stranded there. How does that feel?" I heard a sharp intake of breath. Then a gasp. It was her. She had heard me. She knew who I was. The background noise changed. There was some muffled shuffling, and then a new voice was on the line. It was her. "Amber." "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice high and shaky. "You know exactly who this is," I replied, my voice hard and unforgiving. "I'm the wife. The one whose car you're standing next to. The one whose husband you've been sleeping with. Now put him back on the phone." I heard more muffled sounds, a frantic, whispered argument. Then Mark's voice came back, no longer angry, but desperate. He was begging now. "Sarah, please," he pleaded. "Please turn the car back on. We can talk about this. I can explain everything. Please, just don't do this." "Explain what, Mark?" I asked, my voice rising. The calm was gone, replaced by the full force of my pent-up rage. "Are you going to explain the flowers? The lingerie? The romantic dinners you paid for with our money? Are you going to explain the weekend trip to the hotel? Are you going to explain the hundreds of pictures of you and her I found on our computer? There is nothing to explain. There are only lies. And I am done with your lies." He was stammering now, completely undone. You knew." "I know everything," I said. And soon, everyone else is going to know too. What do you mean? He asked, his voice filled with a new kind of fear. I think your parents would be interested to hear about your late-night work emergencies, I said. Especially your mother. She's so proud of her perfect son. Let's see what she thinks of him now. Before he could respond, I put him on hold. My fingers flew across the screen. I initiated a three-way call. I dialed his mother's number first. She answered on the second ring. Sarah? Is everything all right? It's late. Everything is fine, Carol, I said. I just thought you'd want to be a part of this conversation. I have Mark on the other line. I added her to the call. Then I dialed his father, David. He was a quiet, decent man who I had always liked. I felt a pang of guilt for dragging him into this, but he deserved to know the truth about his son. He answered, his voice groggy with sleep. Hello. David, it's Sarah. I'm sorry to call so late, but this is important. I have Mark and Carol on the line as well. I merged him into the call. What is going on? Carol demanded. Mark, are you there? I unmuted Mark's line. He was silent. He was probably in shock. Mark is here, I said into the phone, my voice clear and strong, for all of them to hear. He's a little tied up at the moment. He seems to be having some car trouble. He's stranded. Isn't that right, Mark? He did not answer. He was breathing heavily. Stranded where? David asked, his voice full of concern. Son, are you all right? Oh, he's fine, I said. He's just a little embarrassed. You see, he's not at the office. He's at his mistress's house. A lovely woman named Amber. He drove my car there. And I turned it off. Now he's stuck on her front lawn. A strangled gasp came from Carol's end of the line. David was silent. Mark, I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. Your parents are on the line. Is there anything you'd like to say to them? Anything you'd like to explain? Finally, he spoke. His voice was a broken whisper. Sarah, please. Don't do this. Don't do what? I shot back. Don't tell the truth? Is that what you're asking me? Because I'm just getting started. This is a private matter. Carol shrieked into the phone. How dare you air our family's dirty laundry like this? You are a vindictive, horrible woman.
I'm horrible.
I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Your son has been cheating on me for over a year. He has been spending our money on another woman. He has been lying to my face every single day. And I'm the horrible one?
No, Carol.
I'm the one who is finally standing up for myself. Your son is a liar and a cheat. And his little fantasy world is about to come crashing down around him. Mark, is this true? David asked, his voice low and full of disappointment. It was the question that sealed Mark's fate. There was a long, agonizing silence. Then, a choked sob from Mark.
Dad,
I can explain. There's nothing to explain, I said, cutting him off. It's over, Mark. We're over. I'll be changing the locks tomorrow. I suggest you find somewhere else to sleep tonight. Maybe Amber has a spare room. But what about the car? He wailed, his voice cracking. How am I supposed to get home? That sounds like a you problem, I said coldly. You can call a taxi. You can ask your girlfriend for a ride. Or you can walk. I really don't care. As for my car, I'll be sending a tow truck to pick it up in the morning. Don't worry. I'll send the bill to your office. I listened for a moment to the chaos on the other end of the line. Carol was screaming at Mark. David was sternly telling him to be quiet. Mark was sobbing uncontrollably. It was the sweet sound of justice. I had done it. I had exposed him. I had taken back my power. Have a good night, everyone, I said cheerfully. And then I hung up. I sat in the silence of my living room, the phone still in my hand. It was over. The confrontation I had dreaded and planned for in equal measure was done. I felt strangely empty. The adrenaline that had been coursing through my veins was gone, leaving behind a profound sense of exhaustion. But underneath the exhaustion, there was a feeling of relief, a feeling of freedom. The truth was out. The lies were broken. I was no longer living on a tightrope. I was standing on solid ground again, and it was ground that I had claimed for myself. I leaned my head back against the sofa and closed my eyes. For the first time in a very long time, I felt a flicker of hope for the future. My future. A future without him. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of his betrayal was still there, but it was no longer a crushing burden. It was a scar, a painful reminder of what I had survived. I got out of bed, and for the first time, the other side of the bed being empty did not feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the sun rise. It felt like the dawn of a new era in my life. My first call of the day was to a locksmith. A very polite man arrived within the hour and changed all the locks on the doors. As he worked, I felt a sense of security I had not realized I had been missing. This was my house now. My sanctuary. And no one could enter it without my permission. My next call was to a towing company. I gave them the address on Maple Street and my credit card information. I told them to tow my car to my driveway and to leave the bill in the mailbox. They assured me it would be taken care of within a couple of hours. Then I began to pack. I went into our bedroom and pulled out 3 large cardboard boxes from the closet. I walked over to his side of the room and began to systematically empty his drawers. Shirts, socks, underwear all went into the boxes. I was methodical, emotionless. These were no longer the clothes of the man I loved. They were the belongings of a stranger, a ghost who had haunted my home for too long. I cleared out his closet, his nightstand, his side of the bathroom cabinet. Every item I touched was a reminder of a life that was now over. I did not feel sadness. I felt only a grim satisfaction. I was purging my life of his presence. I was cleansing my home of his lies. When I was finished, I sealed the boxes with packing tape and dragged them, one by one, to the front porch. I lined them up neatly by the door. A final, undeniable statement that he was no longer welcome here. As I was finishing, my car arrived on the back of a flatbed truck. The driver expertly maneuvered it into my driveway. He handed me the keys and a receipt. I thanked him, and he drove away. I walked over to my car. It looked perfect, unharmed. I got in and started the engine. It purred to life, as if nothing had happened. I sat there for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel. This car was more than just a machine to me now. It was a symbol of my victory. It was the instrument of my liberation. I had taken back what was mine. My phone started ringing. It was a number I did not recognize. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. It was his father, David. "Sarah," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. I just wanted to call and apologize." "You have nothing to apologize for, David," I said gently. "You didn't do anything wrong." "I'm his father," he said. "I feel responsible. We didn't raise him to be this kind of man. To be so dishonest. So cruel. I am so deeply ashamed of him." I could hear the genuine pain in his voice, and my heart went out to him. He was a good man, and he was a victim in this too. His image of his son had been shattered. "I'm so sorry you had to find out this way," I said. "No," he replied. "I'm glad you told me. The truth is always better than a comfortable lie. What he did to you is unforgivable. I want you to know that his mother and I don't speak for his mother, but I support you. Whatever you decide to do, I will support you." "Thank you, David," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot to me." We talked for a few more minutes. He told me that Mark had called him in the middle of the night, hysterical, begging for help. David had told him he was on his own. He had made his bed, and now he had to lie in it. It was a small comfort, but it was something. It meant that at least one person in his family was not going to enable his behavior any longer. Not long after I hung up with David, another call came through. It was Carol. I almost did not answer, but I decided I wanted to hear what she had to say. I was not disappointed. "You have gone too far," she shrieked the moment I answered. There was no greeting, no preamble, just pure, unadulterated rage. "You have humiliated my son. You have ruined his life. All because you couldn't be a proper wife and keep him happy." I held the phone away from my ear, waiting for her to run out of steam. The blame, The vitriol, the complete refusal to hold her son accountable for his own actions. It was exactly what I had expected. "Are you finished?" I asked calmly when she finally paused to take a breath. "No, I am not finished," she yelled. "Mark is a good boy. He just made a mistake. And you have crucified him for it. You should be ashamed of yourself." I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. The absurdity of her words was just too much. "A mistake," I repeated. "Carol, a mistake is when you forget to take out the trash. What your son did was a calculated, long-term campaign of deception and betrayal. He didn't just make a mistake. He made a choice. He chose to lie to me, to cheat on me, to disrespect me and our marriage every single day. And now he is dealing with the consequences of those choices. As for being ashamed, you're right. Someone should be. But it's not me." I did not wait for her to respond. I hung up the phone and then, with a deep sense of satisfaction, I blocked her number. I would never have to listen to her poisonous words again. Later that afternoon, Mark arrived. He came in a taxi, which pulled up to the curb. He got out and saw his boxes on the porch. He stood there for a long moment, staring at them. His face was pale and drawn. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked like a man who had been completely defeated. He walked slowly up the path and tried the front door. It was locked. He knocked. I watched him through the peephole. I did not move. He knocked again, harder this time. "Sarah, I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk." I did not answer. There was nothing left to say. We had had our final conversation over the phone last night. He started banging on the door, his voice rising in desperation. "Sarah, please. Just let me get my things. Let's just talk about this like adults." Like adults. The irony was rich. I walked to the door and opened it a crack, leaving the chain on. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Your things are on the porch," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. "My lawyer will be in touch with you about the rest. Goodbye, Mark." I closed the door and locked it. I heard him shout my name a few more times. I heard him pound his fists against the wood. Then silence. I looked out the window. He was loading his boxes into the back of the waiting taxi. He looked small and pathetic. He looked like a stranger. As the taxi pulled away, I did not feel a single pang of regret. I felt only relief. The storm was over. That evening, Chloe came over. She brought 2 large pizzas and a bottle of expensive champagne. She walked in, looked around the quiet, peaceful house, and gave me a huge smile. "To new beginnings," she said, handing me a glass of champagne. We sat on the floor of the living room, eating pizza out of the box and drinking champagne from the bottle. We talked for hours. We talked about the future. I told her I was going to sell the house. There were too many memories here, too many ghosts. I wanted a fresh start, a place that was all mine. She told me she was proud of me. She told me I was the strongest person she knew. "So, what's the final word on him?" she asked, taking a large bite of pizza. "His father called," I said. "He's disowned him for all intents and purposes. His mother is still defending him, but she's a lost cause. He's staying on a friend's couch for now. Amber apparently kicked him out. I guess she's not so keen on him now that he's a broke, homeless cheater with a mountain of public shame." Chloe laughed. "Of course not. Women like her are only interested in what a man can give them. You take away the money and the status, and they disappear. He'll learn that the hard way." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the events of the last few days settling around us. I felt a deep sense of peace. I had faced the worst betrayal of my life, and I had not only survived it, but I had emerged stronger, more confident, and more in control of my own destiny. The next day, I took my car to a professional detailer. I had them clean it from top to bottom, inside and out. I wanted to erase any trace of him, any lingering scent of her cheap perfume. When I picked it up, it looked and smelled brand new. It was a clean slate. I got in, turned up the music, and just drove. I had no destination in mind. I just wanted to feel the open road in front of me. As I drove, I thought about Mark. He had always seen my car as a symbol of status, a way to project an image of success. He was right in a way. It was a status symbol. It was a symbol of my new status. Single, free, and in complete control of the road ahead. And I was not looking in the rearview mirror.